Hey, deserving listeners, it is time for me to react to your comments on my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Colt and Jess video. So we posted one of those last week, and anonymous upper tier patron emailed in, and she said she used the link below to contact me directly. She says, I know many people on here don't want to empathize with Colt because he can be the worst, but it's more complicated than that. I think it's hard for people who've never had that level of an enmeshment with their parent to understand. You spend your whole life being that person's emotional caretaker, and as you get older, they become more physically dependent on you as well. It's not something you just walk away from, even if you recognize that it is dysfunctional. There's also a level of pride you feel in caring for your parent. Any distance feels as though you are abandoning them. It's taken many years of therapy to get a somewhat healthy version of this with my own mother. I appreciate you explaining enmeshment with compassion and understanding. It is much more complex than the simple internet solutions of Colt just needs to grow up and Debbie needs to get her own life. Yes, agreed, anonymous upper tier patron. It's okay to identify it as, there seems to be something going on here that isn't best for anyone in this situation. But it's a little short-sighted to just say that Colt needs to grow up and that Debbie needs to have her own life, right? It's we all understand that people have problems, right? and ourselves included, and that if our lives were broadcast to the entire world, there would likely be some kind of thing that people in the public would identify that's ridiculous about us. And so when we see that in other people on the television, I hope would have at least some compassion for that. It's okay to get frustrated. It's okay to wish for different things, I think. Well, I mean, it's not a matter of okay or not okay. I would say that it's normal and understandable to have a knee-jerk reaction of just like cringing or anger or frustration. You're just like, ugh. But I hope that people can kind of slow down to say like, well, there's probably more to it than that. And I wonder where he comes from. I wonder what traumas they've all been through. And I'm guessing if you're even watching this video, you agree with that. So I'm probably preaching to the choir. Jordan says, as someone who lost their mom a few years ago, I relate to the feeling of needing to take care of your surviving parent. Part of the reason why I'm so anxious about the current pandemic is because my father is at risk. He doesn't always treat me very well, but I still feel the need to do whatever I can to help him to help keep him happy and healthy. If I lost my dad, I don't even know how I would cope, to be honest. Yeah, that's something that is often lost as people watch the reality TV shows is they'll say, why don't you just move out from your mom's house? What's the big deal? Well, to us, it's no big deal because we don't care about these people. But if this was your own mother, of which you have a very special relationship with, and you lost your father died earlier than you hoped he would, or, I don't know, that's a funny way to put it. But, when your dad dies when he's 95, you think, well, he lived a good life. But if he dies early, which it seems like maybe Colt's dad did, it can be traumatic and it can be complicated. Grief can be complicated. And then all of your hopes and dreams get placed on to your surviving parent. And for us to just say, grow up, move out, throw away your mom, reject her, and for the mom also, having one child, that one family member, one person that likes her, one person that pays attention to her, it's easier said than done. And we all understand that we are relational creatures. We need relationships. By the way, I'm wearing some swag. You can buy this shirt by using the Teespring link below. You can get, like this mug. I really like this mug. All right, my wife, the pod wife, Stacy, designs everything. Sandra says, love these videos and always wish they were longer. It's always nice to know that we're not horrible children for distancing ourselves from a toxic parent. Right. If you have to distance yourself from a parent that is causing problems in your life, it feels bad. But I say it's a lesser of two evils. On one hand, you feel guilty and you are giving up that relationship. But on the other hand, to stay in the relationship would cause too much harm to you. I want to take a second and talk a little bit about the shootings that happened in Atlanta. The first thing I want to say is that as an Asian American, I've known about anti-Asian American sentiment since I was born. I've been on this planet, in this society, in this country for 50 years. I've seen it. I've been called all the names. Just listen to all my episodes where I talk about this sort of thing. Not too long ago, I was called a racial epithet in my hometown, literally for no reason. I was called a chink. It's a horrible thing. Racism is a horrible thing in our country. We understand that, right? And we understand that black people are not the only people who are the victims of racism in our country. This is horrible for this to have happened. It's a huge tragedy. It's raising awareness. People are speaking up. It's entering into the conversation. It's terrible that we had to wait for a bunch of people to be murdered to talk about this. I feel for the families. I know for a lot of us Asian Americans, we have been afraid for a long time for a lot of reasons, particularly recently, and this doesn't help. It's a terrible, terrible thing, and we need to raise awareness. We need to keep talking about it. Let's keep marching. Let's keep speaking out. Let's keep fighting back. Let's not just let these sorts of things happen. Let's not let the police or the racists to dominate the conversation. Let's help people to move forward with this sort of thing. And for all of you who have reached out to me, thank you for the support, and also all you Asian Americans who have reached out to me. We're in this together, and let's all do what we can. Let's support each other. Let's listen to each other. Let's care for each other. And let's advocate. Let's stand up with the picket signs. Let's march. Let's speak out, all the different things. The other thing I want to say is that for the 13 years I've been doing this podcast, I have never considered this podcast to be a timely thing, meaning that I always pre-record everything weeks, if not months in advance. I've never been the sort of podcaster who responds to things as they're occurring. I don't know if you know this, but the videos that I make, the audio episodes that I make, even the posts that I do on Instagram, I'll schedule them weeks, months in advance because my job is such that I have to cram the podcast in where I can. I'm not just sitting here every day during the podcast and videos. I cram it in on the weekends or something, and I schedule it all out. The reason why I'm saying this is that some people will say, how come you're not talking? How come you're not speaking out about that? Well, it's probably because I'm working at my other jobs. I actually am speaking up about it with the people in my life, with my clients, with my supervisees, just not online. And so I just want that to be known, that sometimes people think they're hurt or they're upset or angry at me because I'm not speaking out about something. I've never been, or really never want to be, that kind of content provider where it's immediate, where I'm responding everything. That's why I don't use Twitter, because I just don't have the luxury of doing that. And frankly, I just don't want to be that kind of content provider. I want to record it beforehand and post it weeks later. And so I hope people understand that. And I hope that I'm not coming across as being defensive. Bottom line is that racist acts are happening on a minute-by-minute basis. This act that's in the news is just one of those, maybe the more severe one that happened in the past month or something. But these things are happening all the time. We actually don't have to look that far back to recent news and other kinds of things you wanted me to talk about for other examples. It is a constant part of Asian Americans' lives. And we need this to be a part of the national conversation. It's not just prejudiced or stereotyping or being seen as the model minority. It is literally being murdered for who you are as an Asian American. So let's know that. Let's speak up. I've been talking about it for my entire life. As a professor, I've been talking about it for 23 years. As a podcaster, I've been talking about it for 13 years. So let's keep talking about it, and let's support each other, and let's change our society. Let's do it. Listener Jules emailed me and said, I've been trying to engage in the comments section on YouTube. I try to be differentiated and kind in my views, but sometimes it's just not possible to remain that way, especially when I feel triggered by other comments. Sometimes I feel personally attacked. Is this a normal reaction? What are some ways that someone can cope with comments online that may not be quote-unquote nice? I don't know the answer to that, Jules. If you are feeling triggered, I'm just like you. I mean, there are comments, I go on Reddit and other things like this. It's just hard. It's really hard. I think a big part of it is not being face to face with someone. We lose context. It feels frustrating not to be able to immediately respond. You might hear my dog shaking his head back and forth and flapping his ears. I don't know if you heard that. But I think that there are various different ways to cope. The best way to cope, honestly, is to not read the comments. If you're finding yourself getting personally triggered by it, do you need to read the comments? What's the pros and the cons to reading the comments, right? If it's really important and you get a lot of good things out of your life by reading the comments, then maybe it's worth the occasional being triggered. But my guess is it's probably not worth it given the way that you're saying it. So I don't know. Other ways to cope is to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. My dog wants to go outside just a second. Okay, where was I? Comments, how to deal with them. I don't know. It's hard, especially when you feel personally attacked. That's a hard thing to not feel. It's a hard thing to deal with. Now, maybe if you go to therapy and you can heal from your past issues of being attacked by people in your life, maybe it'll be less intense when you're online. I don't know. But yeah, the internet can be a terrible place, and for a variety of reasons. Just one of the reasons why the internet can be a terrible place is the amount of comments that are posted by psychopaths is disproportionately high. Of the people in the world, there's only a small percentage who suffer from psychopathic personality disorder. These people lack empathy. They don't care about other people's feelings. They might even get off on hurting other people. They might have some sadism in there. And so these people, when you're walking around in your regular everyday life, you're only going to bump into one of these people every now and then, maybe not even ever. But people who are psychopaths are much more likely, according to research, to comment online. So the percentage of comments online that are posted by psychopaths is very high. Now, what is that? Is it 20% of comments, 10% of comments? I don't know. But there's a lot of comments when you look at them where it seems the person is really trying to hurt someone's feelings. They might even be making a good point. It's not that psychopaths can be smart at the same time. They can make good points. But the way that they come across, the wording that they use, and they become very good at, hitting you right where it hurts. And so that's just one factor. There's a lot of other factors, anonymity, all these other kinds of things. Misunderstanding, I think, is another reason. And we just have to take that into account, I guess, when we're reading comments. Now, I will say that the comments that are made in my sphere, the Psychology in Seattle YouTube channel, the Discord, this sort of thing, they are 99.9% lovely people, really respectful, really kind, really supportive. But occasionally something sneaks in there, of course. But other corners of the internet, you're going to see a different culture, if you will. Anyway. Tariq and Hazel videos. Liz says, I agree that Tariq is wrong to lie and hide anything from Hazel. It appears to me that Hazel doesn't want Tariq to have another partner. This is something I don't understand in this type of relationship. It seems kind of hypocritical to me for Hazel to think that. She expects him to be okay with her being in love with more than one person, but she won't accept it if he fell in love with someone else too. I don't think they are on the same page. Yeah, Liz, I don't know what's happening with Tariq and Hazel because they don't talk about this. And I don't know if they're not talking about it at all or they're not talking about it in front of the camera. It seems like they're not talking about it at all. If they had a mentor as the two of them head into non-monogamy, they would ask these questions. And these are difficult questions to answer, and they might not know the answer to these questions. They might have to experience these things before they know what they want and what they don't want. But at the very least, what we see with Tariq and Hazel is that Hazel definitely wants a soulmate who is a woman, someone that is, like she says, a sister or a lover, a wife, a best friend, someone that she can really bond with. So she's looking for a very intense kind of relationship. She also clearly wants to be married to Tariq as well. And so we see for her, anyway, maybe that's her primary goal in life. Maybe she doesn't want to go beyond that. She wants Tariq, and a woman to be married to as well, or, essentially married to. For Tariq, we're unclear what he wants. At the very least, it seems he's open to being with another woman as well. So the question is it the same woman? It seems like maybe not. Hazel, I think in the last episode, said something to the effect of, I want this woman all to myself. So if is Tariq okay with that? Is Tariq okay with Hazel having someone all to herself? Maybe that will be threatening to Tariq. Is Hazel okay with Tariq being with another woman? Is Hazel okay with Tariq being with a lot of different women, sexually, romantically? What is the configuration? Maybe they have someone for Hazel and they have another person for the two of them. I don't know, but they don't seem to be talking about it, and they would benefit by talking about it. And again, maybe they don't know those answers, but they deserve to explore that for sure. But I don't know if we know if Hazel is against Tariq being with another person. All she has said is she doesn't want Tariq being with Minty. Katya says, I sadly did something dumb to my partner this summer. Before I started watching your videos, I reacted like Tariq and rolled my eyes every time something got brought up with my partner. But after I started watching your videos and I started therapy, I have become better at apologizing. We are now making progress in our relationship. Thank you so much for making these videos and helping me and my partner. Heart. 2 thumbs up to you, Katya. If I'm pronouncing your name right. And that is fantastic. You're open. We all do this. We all make mistakes. We all get triggered. We all roll our eyes in a mean, dysfunctional way. It happens all the time. And then we reflect back on it and we're like, oh, okay. I think I'm defended. I think I'm hurt. I'm not dealing with it well. I'll go to therapy. I'll try apologizing. Things usually get better from there, and good for you. Bubbles says, Doc, I don't think you're mansplaining. Oh, I was in the video saying, I think I'm mansplaining. Doc, I don't think you're mansplaining. You communicate from a place of education, compassion, and open to dialogue. Mansplaining is much different than that, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine mansplaining as a concept being applied to a YouTube video in which you choose to watch me yammer on. So, at any time you can just turn it off. The mansplaining concept is one that is born out of sexism and gender socialization that I talked about, where boys are socialized to be in control, to be smart, to be talkative, to be dominant, and not all men operate from that socialization, but many do. Many men feel as though they, in order to establish themselves as a worthy man on the planet, they have to establish that. I'm dominant, I'm smart, I know things, and one way that men will do that is to mansplain, to talk down to women. And any woman will be able to attest to this, where frequently they're experiencing this scenario talking to a man. Not all men, hashtag not all men, but very often, especially if they work with men or they have a lot of men in their lives, where they know something and they're being talked to as if they don't know something. And the man has not even asked, maybe you know this, but or do you want me to mansplain to you for a couple minutes about how to buy a car or something? Women all around the world can say, yeah, I go through that a lot. Men do too. Men are mansplained to. Men are womansplained to. Women are women-splained to. Everyone is splained to, regardless of gender. It just so happens that men are more likely to splain because of socialization, particularly to women, because it's a way of establishing dominance, a way of establishing manliness and this sort of thing. It's not men's fault per se. It's the fault of our society. It's the fault of socialization. But it's our responsibility as men to grow the F up. KH says, my fiance reproposed to me some months ago. Oh, so when Tariq reproposed to Hazel. My fiance reproposed to me some months ago. Fiance, so even before you got married, reproposed. It was so sweet and felt like a brand new chapter. No, a brand new book. We're getting married in early May. Where are we? I don't even know what month it is. I have to look at the date. I don't know what day of the week it is right now. Pandemic brain. Anyway, Are you getting married in early May? Wow, that is in just like 6 or 7 weeks. Lockdown or no lockdown, we've had enough. Well, good for you, KH, and what a wonderful set of letters for a name. Mike and Natalie video. Mike and Natalie video. MK says, watching Natalie cry like that was very distressing for me. She was never my favorite, but that heartbreak was palpable. Yes, the heartbreak was palpable. And I would guess that a lot of people on this show have had a similar, if not more, heartbreak, but just didn't exhibit it in that way. People that we might not empathize with. AT says, we all knew they should not have been married, but Mike should not have waited so long to tell her. He knew he wanted to marry her he knew he didn't want to marry her long before the wedding day. Yeah, I would say it's hard to know what Mike is thinking. I know a lot of people in the comment section are convinced that Mike has never wanted to marry her and is playing her all this time. I don't know if that's true. It could be true. I mean, it wouldn't be beyond the possibilities. But my impression of Mike is that he is really trying in his way. He's put up so many walls and has so many defenses that it's really hard to figure out what he is thinking. From his behavior, it seems as though he wants to try the relationship and at least wants someone in his life. But on the other hand, probably is at least a little bit ambivalent about whether or not it will work with her or not, right, given the amount of conflict that they've had. Online, there seems to be a frequent assumption that when we don't know what's going on, the person is up to no good. They're evil. In other words, when we see someone like Mike and we see ambivalence, on one hand, he wants to be with her, he's showing he wants to marry her. On the other hand, he doesn't, he's breaking up with her all the time. And people look at that situation and there seems to be a knee-jerk reaction that Mike has always known he didn't want to be with her, and thus, essentially, he's evil. Because that would take an evil person. Now, do evil people exist? I mean, the word evil is a little funny, but do people exist who will deceive, lie, they don't care about other people's feelings? Yes, those people do exist. Do sometimes even good people do horrible things to other people? Yes. But in my experience, at least maybe just my worldview, it doesn't happen very often. It happens, but there seems to be this reaction to people on 90 Day Fiancé that when we don't really know what's going on, I will say, especially when it's one of the guys, they tend to be categorized as inherently evil and up to no good and deceptive. They know better. And I think it's tempting to look at Mike as one of those people. Could he be one of those people? Yes, it's possible. But he certainly doesn't fit the profile. The profile he does fit is someone with avoidant attachment style, someone that grew up with emotional neglect and has learned early in life, the age of 2 years old, to shut himself off from his own emotions, from other people. But deep down, there's a desperate need for attachment and love and connection, but no effective way of facilitating that, because in order to facilitate connection, you have to be vulnerable. You have to know your feelings, which avoidant attachment people don't. They don't even know what their needs are. They often feel as though they're kind of robotic, even though they're not. And in order to facilitate love and connection and getting your needs met, you have to be vulnerable. You have to say, hey, that hurt my feelings, or hey, that made me angry, or hey, I love you, or hey, I need you, or hey, I'm sad about this other thing. Can you support me? That's what facilitates closeness. For people with avoidant attachment, they really, really struggle with that. And unless they get a lot of therapy and a lot of self-awareness, they will stay that way. In fact, they might even get worse over time, because their way of coping with distance and rejection is to be very distant and rejecting themselves, which causes people to run away from them, which causes them to feel more neglect and thus more reason to put up walls. So I don't know if that is Mike, but I wouldn't be surprised if I talked with him and got a full, assessment of his childhood and all of his emotional reactivity, that it wouldn't fit that. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't fit that scenario, that conceptualization. But I don't know. Maybe he has known this entire time. Or maybe he's on the fence and he has a really hard time being vulnerable. and his process of going back and forth, we are just not aware of because one, he isn't really aware of it, and two, he doesn't want to express it to Natalie, and three, he definitely doesn't want to express it to the camera. You even see him do this sometimes when he's being interviewed. He'll just be like, yep, I'm done. Or he'll answer questions in this extremely vague way. Because I think what's happening is he has things going on underneath there: anger, sadness, hurt, longing, love, like all the feelings that one would have in a situation similar to Natalie's feelings. But he clamps down on them because he feels very scared about revealing that, because when he was 2 years old, perhaps, total speculation, he was harmed in that process. I don't know. Rebecca and Zied video. A lot of comments here. JD says, Rebecca is so misinformed. The getting to know you part is supposed to happen way before the 90 days happens. The K-1 visa is predicated on the intent to get married once the visa has been issued. Each person has to write a statement of intent to marry in the application process. Effectively, Rebecca is admitting to being untruthful in her submission to the USCIS. Well, that's interesting, JD. That essentially what Rebecca is doing is implicating herself in a lie to the government, which I guess would be true for a lot of people on this show. But yeah, I always love it when I learn these kind of details. So I've heard things along this line, but JD is saying, even in the application process, you have to write a statement of intent to marry, meaning that you've made the decision. There is no ambiguity. You're not still deciding. You are intending to marry this person, and so the 90 days is the opposite of a trial period, the way that a lot of people handle this. Now, can we imagine why Rebecca would want a little bit more time to decide? Yeah, given her history, it makes sense, right? But, it doesn't make sense to the K-1 process. Maybe they should have, what could they have done? He could have just come over to visit. She could have gone out there to visit a little bit longer. If she wants more time, that's fine. I wish people took more time in general anyway. A lot of people get married impulsively. Anyway, Monique says, I hate the way Rebecca dumbs down her language when speaking to Zied. Maybe there is a valid reason for it, but it seems insulting to Zied. I think he can understand a sentence like, I don't have a solution, unquote. Right. So my wife, Stacy, complains about this as well. My wife said, I don't understand why Rebecca dumbs down her language when speaking to Zied. Why does she do that? It seems so strange. Yeah. I don't know. We'd have to ask Zied how he feels about it. Maybe Zied appreciates it. I don't know. It seems that maybe Rebecca's going a little too far. Is Rebecca just mistaken? Is she being racist? Is she treating him like a child? What's going on there? I will say that as a Japanese American, I'm fourth generation, so my grandparents, were born in Washington State. So I didn't grow up with Japanese being spoken. That joke will make sense as I go forward, or that why I'm laughing. Is that when I would go to a Japanese restaurant where there were Japanese nationals who spoke Japanese and accented English, my dad, who doesn't know how to speak Japanese, he's Japanese American, my dad, when he would speak to the waiters and waitresses or other Japanese people, he would kind of, I don't know if the right phrase for it, but he would kind of dumb down his wording. And I always observed that. I go, oh, my dad is talking differently to these men and women from Japan who, speak Japanese and only limited English. Even his accent would change a little bit, and he would say a lot of, oh. And I remember kind of laughing at my dad. I'm like 8 years old, and I'm like just sort of chuckling at my dad. He would really ham it up a little bit, not in a way that I think is bad. If you saw it, you would just think people were talking, and my dad was just being really nice, I suppose. So I don't know what that is. Is that disrespectful? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. If you experience that, you are an English-speaking American, you go to Italy, and you know Italian well enough, but people are speaking down to you. They're sort of speaking in a childish way to you. to help you understand what they're saying. Is that bothersome or is it helpful? I don't know. Let me know in the because I could see it being either. I could see, like myself, if I was learning another language and people were talking more slowly to me so that I could catch the words, and they were using easier syntax for me, I could see myself being appreciative. I could also see people on the outside going, why is that person talking to that man as if that man is a child? Well, they're not talking to me as if I'm a child. They're talking to me as if a person who doesn't understand that language very well. Or is it unnecessary and insulting? I don't know. Let me know. I could see it going either way. It just depends. I suppose we'd have to ask Ziad. Aisha says, as a person who was once married to a Muslim and is currently in a relationship with another Muslim guy, Rebecca came across as disrespectful and surprisingly ignorant to the significance of Ramadan. It is literally the holiest of months in the Islamic faith. He did give her an alternative solution to marriage. He said we'll live physically separate during Ramadan, which, by the way, they can still see each other, but not live under the same roof. Right. It does seem weird that Rebecca would be that up in arms about it. Now, she has a legitimate gripe that he didn't mention it before. Now, other people would say, couldn't you just Google, like your future husband is Muslim, maybe just Google, like, when are the holidays for Muslim people? But it would be on Ziad to inform her, by the way, about halfway through the 90 days, I have Ramadan, and here are the stipulations. So what I think is happening for Rebecca is as the date of the wedding is closing in, she's getting cold feet. The reality of it is starting to set in, and she's starting to wonder if this is the best choice or not. That happens all the time, for better or for worse. And I think it was additionally triggered by the fact that he reveals this Ramadan thing to her, and she's thinking, oh, this feels like a deception. This kind of looks like you're trying to suck me into marriage early against my will. I've been here before with my previous relationship, and I think it's causing a lot of trauma to come up. Now, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have this 90-day thing hanging over their head, and they could take a breather, they could love each other, they could do Ramadan, they could take a few months after that, they could go to couples therapy. But given the time constraint, the television show, I think it's amplifying her anxiety, and I think it's hard for her. I think another thing, actually, I think this is just occurring to me, I don't know, is their relationship, and it seemed this way from the beginning, really. It feels like a good enough relationship, especially in the previous season. But I don't know how many heart-to-hearts they're having. I don't know how much support they are having as a couple. Like with me and my wife, we walk the dogs twice a day now during the pandemic because we're just stuck at home all the time. And we wake up in the morning and we walk the dogs, and then we do our things, and then we eat dinner, and then we walk the dogs. And on those walks, you know, we talk the whole time about all sorts of things. And there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of, like, whatever we want to air, we air, meaning whatever we want to put out there, we put out there over time. And I'm just wondering for Rebecca and Ziad, how much of that back and forth is happening really? Because 1, there's a language barrier. 2, is a massive cultural barrier. 3, I don't know if Ziad or even Rebecca are used to having those kinds of deep conversations. So I wonder if Rebecca in this moment is feeling lack of connection or something, or she can't really check in with Steve, like, because even the conversations that they have where they show us, it seems to go relatively well, but they don't seem like real deep connection. And not that many people on the show have those kinds of conversations. I'm trying to think of anyone that I've seen has had those kinds of conversations. No one's coming to mind. Anyway, Amber says, I asked my ex if he liked me or the video games more, and he couldn't decide between me or the video games. There wasn't even much conflict. He just loved video games. I'm never dating a gamer again. Nothing hurts more than being alone in a relationship 24/7 and constantly put second to an inanimate object. Yeah, So it's a matter of preference. Can someone love video games a lot? Yeah. Can someone be addicted? Can someone have a problem with video games? Yeah. But can someone love video games and want to prioritize their video games and their romantic relationships on an equal level? Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. But the thing here is that before you engage in a relationship with someone, you need to be upfront about that. The person who is like, video games and my significant other, I love them both a lot. It'd be similar to saying like, I love the outdoors. I love hiking. I love snowshoeing and skiing and river rafting and all the, I love that stuff. I need it so much. It's such a big part of my life. And I want to get married. And both of these things are very important. For whatever reason in our society right now, we don't think video games are okay to say that about, but it is okay. It's fine. It's leisure. It's a thing that like anything else. Can you prioritize that? But the point is that you need to tell people, by the way, you're never going to be more important than video games to me. You can be as important, which is actually a big deal because video games are a big deal to me. But just know that I hold video games, they're very important to me. Or, by the way, if you and I are going to start dating, you have to understand I'm going to be playing video games a lot. Or he only dates people that also play a lot of video games, which would be okay too. So it's all a matter of compatibility. And for you, Amber, unfortunately, I'm guessing he did not tell you that from the beginning. And you had to realize it the hard way and felt very hurt by that, which of course it would be. Now, the other thing that could have happened, Amber, that I've seen a lot, is that originally he did prioritize you above video games, but slowly over time, for whatever reason, his love degraded. Maybe there was conflict, maybe there wasn't intimacy, maybe he was just changing his preferences, who knows. And when you asked him, you have to decide between me or video games, then at that point he was like, I can't make that choice. I don't know, Amber, there's a slip. But bottom line, Amber, I'm sorry you went through that. And yeah, it would make sense for you to say, I don't think me and gamers are compatible. But this is an ongoing conversation, especially as the younger generations are coming into adulthood. I grew up with limited access to video games. I had video games when I was a kid, but not a lot. They weren't very good. And now we have people who are born literally playing video games at the age of 18 months on an iPad or something. And so it's a part of people's lives. And how do we navigate that? How do we see it exactly? How do we help people with their needs? Because video games can meet a lot of needs, but they can't meet most of our needs. Most of our needs are met through the regular stuff like exercise and eating well and sleeping and love and cuddling and human contact and being loved and the exchange of information with people face to face or, however we communicate. Nature, we have a lot of needs and video games meet some of those needs, but I think we have kind of like an adolescent understanding of that process. We tend to look at video games as a childish thing or something that's bad, something that no one should be doing when, it's something, it's okay. It's fine. It's like reading a book, like I said, like hiking. It's something people do for fun or for leisure. And how do we balance that out? How do we talk about it with our partners? If you're not a gamer, how do you talk with your gamer partner in a way that isn't mean to them, in a way that respects that that's what they want to do, while asserting your needs and probably advocating for their needs? Maybe they have a hard time admitting that they even want connection, and their video games is a way of hiding, and it's a safety blanket for them that they can return to when they're scared. How do we help people to loosen up and feel safe outside of video games so that they don't have to turn to video games? Anyway, Zier says, Dr. Kirk with headphones and his wife is me and my boyfriend, but I'm the one wearing headphones listening to Dr. Kirk. Oh, Dr. Kirk with headphones and his wife is me and my boyfriend, but I'm the one wearing headphones. Oh, okay. So Zier is saying, I'm the one listening to Dr. Kirk while my husband is saying to me, like Rebecca is saying, hey, okay. That's funny, Zero. All right. Andrew and Amira, let's move on to that. Anonymous from Switzerland says, how can I trust myself when I'm such a leaf in the wind? First of all, I would like to thank you for normalizing the idea of trauma for me. It has opened so many doors. I was watching Andrew and Amira number 6 and became very triggered by the way Andrew was talking to her. I dated someone just like him when I was younger. He would stonewall me and ignore me for days, then apologize. Because I felt so anxious and guilty, I would alter my boundaries for him. On and on this went until I lost all semblance of myself and my wants. It got so bad I developed chronic pelvic pain due to muscle tension and stress that I still have to this day. I'm in therapy, both psychological and physical, and I am slowly healing, but it has been years of pain. Now I am worried, though, that I will never be able to trust myself again, given how people-pleasing I am. I wreck my own body rather than say no to others. How can I learn to trust myself and others again? I cannot go through what I suffered again. Yeah, Anonymous from Switzerland, by the way, emailed in about this process. Well, I'm glad you're in therapy, both psychological and physical. Keep going. It takes a long time. Recovering from that trauma is very hard. I'm guessing it probably even predates that relationship. Usually when we are people pleasers and we are traumatized by someone who capitalizes on our people pleasing, we had people pleasing tendencies prior to being in that relationship. So I'm glad you're in therapy and just keep going. And it is very normal for people who internalize their emotional troubles, which dependent people pleasing will do, to develop physical ailments. It's very, very common. Back pain, all sorts of things can happen. It's hard to always know if it's related to stress and to internalization of emotions because we don't have a blood test for that sort of thing, but there seems to be a lot of good evidence that that happens a lot. So, like, for example, I believe research shows that people pleasers tend to have more physical ailments. Anyway, so I'm glad you got out of it. I'm glad you're getting therapy. I'm glad you recognize that you matter in life. And yeah, we can look at a relationship like Amira and Andrew and absolutely be triggered by our past traumas that we've been through in relationships. I'm guessing a lot of people are with you. Sable Rain says, I moved from America to Australia for love. I gave up my family, my friends, 99% of my belongings, and my green card. I can never go back to America. I did not realize how deep this loss would be until it was too late. It has been a deeply frightening, painful, and lonely experience, and I feel for everyone on the show who leaves their life behind. Yes, thank you for empathizing with Amira, Sable Rain. I think that's something that is hard to really relate to unless you've been through it the way you have. Allison says, Andrew has a very subtle way of pressuring Amira. He says it's okay if you don't want to go to Serbia, but he says it in a tone that makes it clear that it's not okay. It's almost as though he's saying, you don't have to go, but that means you don't really care about me if you don't. And that's why Amira feels so compelled to go. I do hope she finds the strength to say what she is really feeling. Right. That's the way I would describe it too. You know, it's almost as though he's saying, you don't have to go, but that means you don't really care about me. And that seems clear from the way he reacted to that conversation about the kids. The way he interprets it is, oh, you don't love me. And how that's really hurtful. And that's not what Amira was saying. She was saying, I just don't want to have kids if our relationship is terrible. I'm not saying I don't love you. And so I think Andrew has traumas around being abandoned or suddenly learning that someone doesn't love him. Gab says, I feel for Amira. I grew up with family members who would bulldoze me. They'd often disregard my wants and feelings and coerce me emotionally to agree to whatever they wanted. When you grow up like that, setting boundaries feels extremely risky because you automatically expect some form of retaliation. Amira's father said to her, "I'll never speak to you again." And Andrew said to her, "If you don't come, it's over." It seems that no one really cares about her in a healthy way. Yes, very astute connection, Gab. That the father in the show seems like a sympathetic character. I think we can get behind him because he is advocating for Amira. But in that process, we heard what he said, which is, "I'm never going to speak to you again if you do this." It was hard for us to exactly know what they were saying. Were they speaking English to each other? I can't remember, but it's hard for us to know what was actually being said. But it's a worthy hypothesis, Gab, that Amira grew up with someone that would do that to her, where they would say, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I 100% reject you. It's called conditional love, right? What we want for our kids is unconditional love. And as therapists, we want to provide unconditional positive regard to our clients. When it's conditional, then you learn, oh, I can't advocate for what I want. I have to do what they say if I'm going to get love. And then that, if you rinse and repeat that throughout your childhood, then you emerge into adulthood, being dependent on other people while resenting it, and giving in, being compliant to other people while resenting it, not being assertive, that sort of thing. But Amira seems to be turning a new leaf recently, which is good for her. And hopefully, if her and Andrew want to work on this, there's a way out of it. We don't have to look at Amira and Andrew and go like, that relationship is doomed. It's not doomed. I've worked with couples like that before, much worse couples than that. And with some understanding, with some love, with some changes, with some assertiveness, with some reassurances, like with him, he's interpreting any kind of assertiveness from her as an indication that she doesn't love him, which is not the case, right? Why is he having that? Well, I'm guessing from past trauma. So if we could make that aware to him, and he could take some deep breaths and remind himself and say, okay, I feel like she says she doesn't love me right now, and that's really hurtful. And then I would be there saying, she's not saying that to you. Amira, are you saying that you don't love him? No. And Amira would say, no, I'm not saying that. Okay, so Andrew, take some deep breaths, remind yourself that she loves you, and she doesn't want to do what you don't want to do. Those things can exist in the same universe. She can love you and not comply with you. Those things can be the same. It's okay. You still are loved, even though she's not complying with you. So take a deep breath. I've worked with people like that. It takes a long time, but it can work. Sean says, what I heard Amira say was that she doesn't want children to be raised in an emotionally, physically, and verbally abusive relationship. That's perfectly reasonable and to any human being, male or female, just saying. Yeah. MI says, this episode of 90 Day actually helped me disengage from someone I needed to much sooner. I sent a final no contact text this week. It's my way of not getting on the plane after so many conversations like this. Well, yeah, good for you, MI. You look at this episode and you're just like, I am Amira. I'm not going to get on that plane. I'm going to say no to this person. So, 2 thumbs up to you. All right. I also made a audio-only episode. I do 3 or 4 of those every week. And one of them was called the Movie Diversity Test, where me and Colin and Alberto came up with our own tests of diversity in movies. Mine was for Asian Americans. Berto's was for Colombian Americans or Latinx Americans. And for Colin, it was for gay people. And Lisa O'Brien commented, that was a fascinating discussion. Thank you. Things are normal for me that I don't see represented in things that are normal for me that I don't see represented in many movies and TV series as a regular part of background life are children with a disability and healthy, close mother-son relationships. Yeah, you don't see a lot of that. Jessica Wong says, this is giving me flashbacks to growing up Asian in Hawaii, a truly unique experience on Earth. I definitely never felt represented in movies and TV, and even having a movie set in Hawaii that doesn't center on pale-looking tourists is a true rarity. That'll be item number 1 to start my list for diversity in movies. Yeah, agreed. Sultan Bianca says, interesting discussion. Some of the best depictions of gay characters and gay love on the screen, in my humble opinion, are Call Me By Your Name, Please Like Me, Moonlight, The Kids Are All Right, Pride, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Yeah, Call Me By Your Name and Moonlight are some of my 2 favorite movies in the past 5 years. Love says, being a gay man, I thought Colin's list was spot on. As someone around Kirk's age, I'm also glad that Colin was able to miss the onslaught of gay-inspired films that almost always were about AIDS, HIV. In the 80s, 90s, and early aughts, there was rarely a film which featured a gay character or characters who didn't have HIV, were dying of HIV, or trying to avoid HIV. Yeah. Oil says, I think the show Superstore passes all the tests. Yes, I love the show Superstore. Of all the shows on television, there's only like 2 or 3 that my wife and I watch, and Superstore is one of them. And I have laughed out loud so many times on that show. I find it to be delightful. Yeah, it does kind of follow all the tests, because for Berto's test, it has America Ferrera, who's a Latina woman. And then for my test, it has 3 Asians in the top 8. Now, they're, in terms of lists, they're 5, 6, and 8. But still, 3 Asian Americans. You have Mateo, who is Filipino. You have Cheyenne, who is Hapa. But I think she's Japanese. Her actress name is Nicole Sakuda, so I'm assuming that she's, like me, half Japanese. You have Sandra, who's played by a Hawaiian woman, and all 3 of these Asian American characters do not have accents and are allowed to be fully human. Each one of those characters, I mean, Mateo, Cheyenne, and Sandra are 3 of the funniest characters on the show. I mean, honestly, when you think of all the jokes, I mean, especially Cheyenne, especially Sandra, I mean, every time, if you see the show Superstore, every time Sandra says something, I'm just busting laughing. And so to have 3 Asian American characters. Now, I will say, when Mateo had the undocumented part of his storyline, I was like, ugh, why do we always get foreignized? But Cheyenne and Sandra obviously have and Sandra's husband, right, is also Asian American. And then, of course, Mateo is gay. And so that would pass Colin's test, I think, because Mateo is just allowed to just be a regular person who has regular romantic relationships and various different kinds. Wildflower Liz, so many great points in this one. One question I got a lot is, what's your nationality? And when I answer American, the white person gets offended. Yeah. What's your nationality? American. I was born in America. That's literally your nationality. Now, if you want to ask what's your ethnicity or what's your heritage, but come on, white people, stop asking non-white people this question all the time. It is exoticizing. It's foreignizing. It's ridiculous. It's well-meaning, maybe, but, just stop it. Knock it off. Patron Alina says, people with disabilities are 26% of the population. 1 in 4 of the U.S. population have a disability. And our representation in TV and movies is horrific. There's the villain with a disability. Pirates have missing appendages, limbs and eyes. Darth Vader has prosthetic arms and legs. But more commonly, we have the disabled person who overcomes. He's blind, but he climbed Mount Everest. He has cerebral palsy, but he's an amazing artist. He's autistic, but a brilliant surgeon. He's developmentally disabled, but accomplishes extraordinary feats. Why can't disabled people just be normal? Why can't we see someone struggling with it and not be inspiring? Yes, Patron Alina. Well, actually, I think we got a number of emails like this. Yeah, this is a big problem in our society, Patron Alina, and thanks for emailing in, and thanks for giving me a chance to talk about it in this format. All right, well, let's start another week in which I post God knows how many videos about 90 Day Fiancé and other kinds of things. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.